Ys 5, Lost Kefin, Kingdom of Sand is a bit of a hard game to review. On one hand, I knew full well going into this game that it was going to be a mediocre experience. That being said, I won't be taking a look at this game by comparing it to other titles, but how it set the precursor the series would go on to use, taking many of the elements and using them in later titles such as Ark of Napishtim and Oath and Felghana. Even for an action RPG of the SNES era though, its combat is clearly not the best. This doesn't mean the game doesn't have redeeming qualities though. The gameplay can be rather rough, but taking a look at it is easy to see how Falcom was trying to evolve Ys into a much more action-oriented combat system and step away from the traditional bump systems and Metroidvania styles that earlier titles would use. The game performed poorly enough to cause Falcom to shelve the series and skip an entire console generation, before revamping the combat and many other elements in this game and successfully pulling it off in Ys 6, Ark of Napishtim, 8 years after Kefin's release. Ys 5 is also a bit of an odd one out, as it is the only Ys game to have not received a modern remake, to help it better fit in the game's continuity. There are also a lot of debate online whether or not Ys 5 is even considered canon because of this, as it is missing on the series' official timeline. There are definitely evidence to support this game is still canon. Lost Kefin sits in the middle of Ys Oath and Felghana and Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. Shall we see how bad this game is? Is it even worth playing if you're looking to get into Ys games? Well, sit back, relax, subscribe to the channel, and let's find out as we review Ys 5, Lost Kefin, Kingdom of Sand. As stated in the introduction, this game takes place between Oath and Felghana and Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. This time, Adol is exploring the continent of Afroca. Adol has begun to garner a reputation around the world, and his adventures are starting to spread across the land. The arrival of Adol catches the eye of a merchant named Dorman, who has been tasking people with a mission to retrieve crystals from across the land and bring them back. He tasks Adol with doing just that. It is here we learn of a young boy with crimson red hair that will bring destruction to the continent of Africa, which makes some of the villagers wary of Adol because of this prophecy. Kefin was a kingdom that was lost long ago and has become a local legend. Ys 5, Lost Kefin, Kingdom of Sand actually has a really good story, but it's bogged down by questionable pacing and suffers from information overload towards the end of the game. As a matter of fact, the last 2.5 hours of this game was where I found my most enjoyment from this game, not because of the gameplay, but because of its mystery slowly being uncovered. This game actually does a really good job with its characters, despite its length and being an SNES title that focuses on one protagonist. There was a specific character named Stoker I would have liked to see more screen time, as I found his character interesting. This is something alongside a laundry list of other things I'd like to see Falcom address in a remake if they ever decide to make one. Most of the pacing issues I had can be overlooked because of the game's relatively short length. My total playtime clocked in around 8 hours or just a little over. It's a pretty short game. Ys 5's gameplay is a critical failure. It is clear this game was the precursor to many elements that Falcom would later perfect and reuse in Ark of Napishtim and Oath and Felghana. But their first attempt at this didn't work so well. First off, the hitboxes are completely off. Sometimes it appears you are clearly hitting an enemy with an attack which should be landing, but it doesn't. It left me scratching my head on more than one occasion. It is clear Ys tried to replicate many other games such as Zelda and other Quintet titles, but failed. The gameplay isn't unfair, surprisingly, despite feeling clunky and irritating at times. The game actually suffers from being way too easy. It is too easy to level up and become overpowered in this game, as all bosses can be spammed with regular attacks by cheesing the fight and standing in one place and repeatedly attacking the enemy over and over. Throw in a health potion, which you can carry 10 of those, and bam, you're back to fighting. If you want a challenge, I'd recommend not using potions at all, but even projectiles and enemy patterns are not hard to figure out and dodge. Another mechanic that this game fails miserably at is its magic, which is a shame. This time around, Adol is able to craft magic via alchemy by combining 3 elements together. He can make a specific spell to use in combat. The idea behind this is to be able to equip it to your weapon and use the R button to charge it up and fire it at your enemies. Frankly, it's clunky, unresponsive, unnecessary, and a complete waste of time. Magic is more of a hassle to use than it's worth, and the difficulty of the game doesn't ever really warrant learning how to use it. This is something I'd like to see them rework in a remake. Another mechanic introduced in this game that made appearance later was platforming, which was pretty easy to navigate for the most part, despite one area where I kept on missing the jump over and over again, being washed down the river only to start at the beginning after the 100th time. It got old really fast. I found the puzzles far too easy as well, posing no real challenge either. Most of the time it was just a flick of a couple switches which were on the beaten path and easy to see. Same with the treasure chest. The game never really incentivized exploring, which was a bit of a shame considering that's a lot of fun with the Ys titles, is being able to explore the various caverns and places that Adol visits. Overall, it is clear that Falcom would learn from these mistakes and perfect them on in later games. As bad as its gameplay was, it was no reason that Falcom decided to scrap the series and put it on the back burner for as long as they did, and reworked many of its ideas to perfect it in later games. Currency is also another bit of a weird thing, because it's easy to level up in the game, but it's also easy to get money. You get money by collecting gems and selling them through various different shops. And by doing so, you get money, and you get lots of it, meaning you can buy some of the strongest armor very, very early on in the game. I think I had some of the best armor that I could have up to about halfway through the game, really, right at the beginning, just spending the first hour and a half grinding crystals. We can't talk about Ys and not talk about its amazing soundtrack, as the series has become known for having an excellent soundtrack to accompany Adol's adventures. If I'm being real with you guys, I've heard complaints about the game's soundtrack, and while it's definitely not my favorite, I don't think it's bad either. It has some good songs that serve as satisfactory background noise, with a few titles standing out. The soft melodic melodies I felt worked well with the game, which was a contrast to the usually heavy-hitting rock the series is known for. I honestly hope in a remake they keep many of these songs and make them sound better, but also add in new tracks to specific areas to make it feel more like an Ys title when it comes to its music. Ys 5 Lost Kefin is not a title I can recommend. If you want a history lesson in seeing how Falcom improved and what was the precursor to a lot of Falcom's titles, you might have fun with this game. But between its easy difficulty, clunky combat, and overall average gameplay, I found myself bored with this title more than enthralled. Despite my love for the story, especially towards the end, I couldn't recommend this title at all. Honestly, you'd be better off waiting for the remake, which Toshihiro Kondo has hinted at of wanting to do a couple of times. Ys 5 was a very experimental game for Falcom, and no doubt an important game for them on a developmental level. But it has too many flaws to make it enjoyable. Wait for this game to get a remake and experience it that way, or look up a few Let's Plays and get your story that way. In closing, Ys is a game title Ys 5 is a title I have no desire to go back and replay. At least not in the current state that we have it available to play today. If Falcom ever does remake this game, I will be more than willing to give the game a second look and see how that remake holds up to the original game, see how they've expanded on it, and see if they make it a much better experience. There's a lot of good ideas here that just weren't executed all that well, and it's easy to see how this did inspire a lot of the previous titles moving forward. The next Ys game we're going to be reviewing is going to be E6 Ark of Napishtim. This is where we are going to be receiving a lot of information regarding some of the lore, and everything's going to start to combine together. I'm really looking forward to playing this title because I've heard a lot of high praise coming from this game. So be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss that review when it goes live. Also hit subscribe to keep up to date with all things JRPG, RPG, and Japanese gaming related, and most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.